Season's greetings, college football fans. Welcome to another edition of Urban's Take. Urban Meyer, man, we're getting right down to the nub of it on this season, aren't we, my man?
Yeah, it's. I'll tell you, it's been a great season. Obviously, uh, without the one game, but as far as Fox Big Noon, be able to cover it, the ratings we had, the team we got to put together, Mark Ingram was a lot of fun, and I think there's two great matchups for the college football playoff.
Yeah. I just wanted to get right into it with you. You won three of these things, three national championships, the first ever college football playoff championship with Ohio State way back in 2014. Seemed like it was like 2 years ago, but did the college football playoff committee get it right? Now that's an open-ended question. And like I texted you with some ideas here. Should Texas and Alabama have been joined at the hip in this thing? I know you said on Big Noon, if Alabama gets in, Texas should get in. But when you look back on it now, go ahead, give me your take on this.
Yeah, I share the same thoughts as many people that Florida State, they got screwed. I mean, that was their coach. I met him a couple of times, and he took over a really tough situation, and they put together a great team. However, I do believe they got it right because I watched them closely. And then I went back and watched the film because a lot of times on TV, you can't really watch it. And they're a completely different team without their quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, they ran Wildcat a ton of times in that game. And it was a very clunky offense. They're not a great team without that quarterback. They're a really good team, great defense. But Louisville was, it just didn't look like a great game. And then all of a sudden you're watching Alabama and Georgia. You're watching some of these other teams. I saw Texas up close and personal. To me, they're the best looking team in college football. I think they got the best roster. So they beat Alabama. And I made this point many, many times. Alabama could not have went in there ahead of Texas. You can't do that. If that would have happened, I said this on TV that I would have went in to see Gene Smith if I was still coaching and said, get rid of all our non-conference. We're playing Mid-America Conference schools. And it doesn't matter because the committee doesn't look at that. Head-to-head does matter. So I think they got it right. It's an imperfect system. The way they do it, they have three coaches on the committee. Those are the only people that really have that experience to watch tape to pick the four best teams. But I believe they got them right. Those are the four that I would have picked. And I wanted to make sure before I spoke, I watched all the tape and those are the four best teams.
Okay.
I'll tell you what though, Georgia's one of the, to say Georgia's not one of the four best teams, that's tough as well.
Well, this is what bothered me. And, I'm going to talk to you about your past, your history with great teams that didn't get the shot, but what bothered me was how they said Florida State wasn't one of the four best teams, and so they dropped them to five, and as your friend and mine, Jeff Snook, pointed out, Florida State would have been a double-digit underdog to anybody, all the other teams in the top eight other than themselves, if in fact they had been matched up with them. And, who knows what that means, but they only dropped them to fifth. Why didn't they, if they felt so like they weren't the same team they used to be, why didn't they drop them to eighth? You know what I mean? It's like, that's the only part I didn't get, and am I right to look at that a little bit sideways?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, but there's probably some empathy there, which shouldn't be in the committee.
Right.
That's your job. But yeah, if Georgia played Florida State right now, Georgia would beat Florida State unless something happened. But there's so many truths to what people are saying, but there had to be. Those are human beings in that room. And to say, here's an undefeated conference champion, did everything they possibly could, and we're going to move them to eight.
Yeah.
So I feel, there's no right answer. And we think this is going to go away next year with 12. No, it's going to be a street fight for whoever that number 12 team is.
Yeah, but I'm not going to feel as sorry for number 13 as I am for number 5. I mean, I think you agree with me on that one. We already talked about that before, but 2004, I told you that Utah team was special, man, and you guys didn't get a chance to play for the national championship. 2012, of course, your first year at Ohio State, because of transgressions before, you guys didn't get to go to a bowl game or even play for the Big Ten championship. But That team went undefeated. I mean, one of the few in Ohio State history to go undefeated. And 2015, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so, what do you tell your team if you're Jay Novell? What did you tell your team in 2004? Obviously, you guys were pretty happy to be undefeated, but at Utah. But go ahead.
Yeah, I go back to 2001. We took over a team that was 1-10, I believe, and we went 9 or 8-3, and our team wanted to keep practicing. We didn't even get to go to a bowl game.
Yeah.
Back in the MAC didn't have more than one bowl game, and so I had to stand in front of that team. In 2015, that's arguably that was the best team in the country. We just didn't coach well, and we lost the game to Michigan State, and then we just beat the brakes off of the Wolverines and then Notre Dame in the bowl game Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
So you just got to talk to the team, but that team, the Florida State players, which are the most important people, did everything they possibly could do to win. And the reality is their best player got hurt. The reality is that this way that works in college football playoff, you're out. So I imagine they just had a bunch of tears and a bunch of hugs. And now let's go. I think they're going to try to, they're in a tough game though. They got Georgia.
Yeah.
And they don't want, I would use it as a rallying cry. And I'd tell those guys, I'll buy you a ring. I'll buy you something that tells you, because in my heart, you're a national champion.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like you did in 2012. Hey, but you brought up that 2015 Ohio State team, which I thought was better across the board, talent-wise, than the 2014 that won it all. You guys went on and won the Fiesta Bowl over Notre Dame. 2017 season, y'all won the Cotton Bowl, I think it was, over USC. Do I have that right? And
Yes.
In 2018, y'all beat Washington in the Rose Bowl. The point was, y'all had a loss in those seasons that took you out of the college football playoff, but y'all found a way to keep your heads up and play big time football. You know what I mean? What was your secret sauce then?
Really good
What
luck.
I'm getting to here is there's a lot of crying by a lot of teams that didn't get what they wanted. You know what I mean? On selection Sunday. So, you've seen it before where this game doesn't mean anything to us. That's our excuse for losing, etc. How did you keep those teams rolling?
But great staff and great players, leadership in the locker room. We had some players sit out, but not many. Think about that 15 team, that all those NFL players that came back and not only played, but played their heart. Zeke Elliott, he didn't have to play in that game. He was already going to be a top 10 pick.
Joey Bosa.
Mike Thomas had all those great players. Joey Bosa came back. I know he got kicked out of that game for hitting with his head, but spearing. But that's that's another thing I made on Big Ten Network. The point I made is that there's so many positives to a 12-team playoff. Number one is a quality of player who's going to continue to play. Yeah. Right now, I don't know Ohio State's what's going to happen or some of these other teams, but I imagine some of these top, 15, top 25 first-round players, there's a chance they won't play.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you experienced that. I mean, like Denzel Ward didn't play. Run them down the line. I mean, there are guys who sat out. I wanted to ask you this though. Ohio State right now, what's going on? Their starting quarterback, Kyle McCord, jumped into this transfer portal. He, among about 30 or 40 other quarterbacks around the country. It's crazy. They've had 13, 14 players jump into the portal. Ohio State has. What is Ryan Day dealing with there right now? And does there come a moment in time where you fish or cut bait, so to speak, meaning guys may be coming into your office thinking, hey, I got to get more in the portal. I mean, I got to get more out of the NIL. I got to do this. I got to do that. Where do I stand on the depth chart moving forward, et cetera? Just can you imagine handling those kind of questions at this moment? I think you're sitting kind of not fat, but you're sitting pretty happy in semi-retirement, aren't you?
I am, because that made no sense. I'm still trying to comprehend it. And I try to take a position of Kyle or even Ohio State, and it just doesn't compute. He had a good year.
Yeah.
I mean, they beat Notre Dame, his first time starter, 3 new offensive linemen. He's on the 37-yard line. He threw 2 interceptions in the Wolverine game that weren't his fault.
Yeah.
The Marvin's got to finish the route, and then On the other one, he got hit.
Yeah.
No, he's going. He got it to his third read on the play, so it took him all the way back to the backside in route. I'm talking about the final play against Wolverines. So
Yeah.
it doesn't. I'm trying to make it compute because I want to be empathetic and I want to think, okay, I understand. There's no place better for Kyle than Ohio State. That place does not exist unless he's being guaranteed a starting spot. But once again, I don't agree with that's the best place.
Yeah.
I think iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel. That the best thing that anybody can ever do is go and compete your tail off, get better, and maximize who you are as a player. So I'm not ripping Kyle at all because I don't know him, but I mean I admire him, and I think he was in a tough situation all year. But yeah, I don't either. I didn't dig in too hard because I don't want to, but I don't. That does not compute with me. That I guess I love Ohio State, and I think competition brings out the best in you. If he goes to a better place than Ohio State, I'll be the first one to say he went to a better place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of under the impression it might have been a conversation between him and Ryan Day where, Ryan just said, hey, we're going to open this competition back up to a certain extent, because he's trying to get the best out of his quarterbacks. You heard him say many times this year how they left points on the field. It kind of became a constant refrain. And so, yeah, it's just too bad. But the bottom line is he's not there. And Ohio State's got to use Devin Brown. And, it looks like Devin Brown's going to be the starter in the bowl game against Missouri, a really good Missouri team, right? I mean, there's no looking back at this moment, right, Urban? Because looking back does you no good.
Yeah, this bowl game's going to be, I was thinking about this yesterday because I watched Missouri and they are hungry. Missouri doesn't get the limelight that the Ohio State players get.
Yeah.
And the media attention that this coaching staff, deservedly so, what they did this year, kind of came out of nowhere. And Tim, they are really good.
Yeah.
This is a really good team. They do things offensively and defensively that are a pain in the ass for the opponent. They're a really good team. And this is their chance we beat the Buckeyes. Yeah. So the Buckeyes better be, this is going to be, they're an SEC team. This is SEC against the Big Ten. And I know Ohio State wishes they were 37 yards away from going to the Rose Bowl, but that somehow they got to cleanse themselves of that and move on.
Hey, real quick before we move on to the last 2 points, I wanted to ask you this though. You were in Ohio State for 7 years. When things didn't go right, the vitriol, et cetera, that was around in social media, you probably didn't pay attention to it and stuff, but that's sort of the slings and arrows that Ryan Day and Kyle McCord dealt with through this season, even though the season was 11-1. Are things out of control in that regard, the expectations for an Ohio State?
Of course they are. And I made the mistake at Florida of trying to please people. And I didn't read it, but I did read it. It was one of those things where I would be like, we went 13-1 and went to the Sugar Bowl, and the things that were said, we won 22, I think, straight games, and we lost Alabama. And it was awful. We couldn't sell tickets to the Sugar Bowl, and everybody's like, what a failure of a season. And we didn't win back-to-back national titles. And that really put me in a bad spot. And I know our players really struggle with that. Players are more resilient than coaches. I did do that at Ohio State. So, whoever sat in in his basement staring at a computer and saying awful things about you, they didn't get me at Ohio State. Yeah. I didn't go there. Yeah. But I see players staring at their phones, and probably coaches as well, and it beats you up. Yeah. So my encouragement to everybody is go find a way to beat Missouri, do the best you can, maximize yourself as a team and a player, and try not to. I don't get that. I wish that part of the world didn't exist.
Yeah.
I see broadcasters too that I just wish that I don't understand the name calling and I just don't. We don't do that at Fox. If Fox ever became that, I'm.
Yeah. Sayonara.
See you later.
Yeah.
See you later.
Fox, Mexico. Sayonara. Yeah. It's too bad. on top of the name calling, the screaming is what really gets me, Urban. I just how can you be that perfect in your life and you know what I'm talking about, and be so judgmental for others. But that's another
Yeah, but I will say this, and every year I would remind our staff, remind our team that you don't have to be here.
yeah,
We all, and some
yeah,
guys leave. You can go to so many other places where 11-1 is acceptable. Matter of fact, there's 130 of them.
yeah,
You can go to a lot of places where mediocre or hey, you tried. And Ohio State is not one of those places.
yeah,
And we all made it, coaches get paid very well. You get all the fringe of all being a player at Ohio State, all the NIL, all the 110,000, the greatest fans in the world. With that comes the reality is that if you come up short, you're going to hear about it and move on.
yeah. Speaking of moving on, I vote for the Heisman. I think it's the 40th year I've voted for the Heisman Trophy.
Wow.
I'm not allowed to say who I voted for to win it, etc. We all know the finalists: Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and a guy that you pinpointed last year as the best player in college football, Marvin Harrison Jr., who is probably, in my opinion, he's probably going to win the Biletnikoff. It's going to be could be a hell of a weekend for Marvin, although he's far from favored in the Heisman vote. But who was your favorite? Who was your most valuable? Who was your best player in college football this year? You got to see a lot of guys. You got to see a lot of guys up close and personal. Who's that player that should be walking across that stage on Saturday night getting that trophy?
I think Bo. I love Bo Nix. He plays the position the way that I love to see it played. He's a runner, thrower, tough guy. A great leader. And I'm still shocked they lost. I think Washington's really good. I don't want to devalue Washington, but
yeah,
I like to coach at Oregon. Spent some time with him on the phone a couple times. I just like the aggressiveness of him. He got a lot of people took shots at him for going for it on fourth down. You remember?
no, I did. Yeah,
I tried that all the time, and I just want our players to feel the aggressiveness, and the locker rooms appreciate that. So, Bo Nix to me would have won it, but I think it's be Jaden Daniels. He's put up Star Wars numbers. You know how I feel about Marvin. Marvin needs to be in New York. I'm glad he's going.
yeah,
He'll go down as the greatest receiver and greatest in Ohio State history. My God, going back to Chris Carter and Olave and Garrett and Mike Thomas and my gosh,
yeah.
and he'll be a top three.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have a hard time not taking him one.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a generational NFL talent. So I think the quarterback at LSU is going to win it.
By the way, he wouldn't commit to the fact that was his last. Was his last year at Ohio State, or that he's going to the NFL. Of course, we're all wink, wink, nudge, nudging on that, But I'm telling you, man, I know why you like Marvin, because he's a hell of a player. I also know why you like him, because that loss to the team up north for the third straight year bit him, man. I mean, it affected a lot of these players, and we'll see how much it really matters right in the bowl game. But there's a good chance he may not play in the bowl game, but he didn't commit that he wouldn't. So I think that's at least showing this guy gets it, right?
Well, he's got a father. He's got a very unique situation that most humans don't have, and that's a Hall of Fame father that's going to direct him and lead him, and a mom, and that's been through it. So they're not. I imagine they're not seeking outside counsel in this. They don't have to.
Yeah.
You're talking about, and I met Senior, Marvin Harrison Senior, and spent time with him, and I know people played with him, and you're talking about first class all the way through. A young guy like that's going to leave Ohio State without a pair of gold pants.
Yeah.
I read today or yesterday that there's a thought of him maybe coming back, and common logic is like, no, he's gone. Yeah. But then there's the NIL money, and the reality is that, does he want one more swing at them? And I know one thing, I would, if, like, I hate to say this, but the last game at Ohio State, if we didn't beat the Wolverines 62-39, I don't know if I could have, it was time for me to go, but I might have said, wait a minute, I can't do this.
Yeah.
You can't lose to that team.
62. That's a lot of points against anybody. Especially
we were within a strike of one more too.
I know, man. Why'd you go for it? Because they wouldn't let me go for 3. Checkmate moment, in my opinion, our final point of the week, and I always enjoy this. The checkmate moment I offered to you was Georgia cuts Alabama's lead to 27-24 with 2:51 left. They had one timeout left. Alabama, faced a 2nd and 8 at the Georgia 43 with 1:56, and Jalen Milroe fakes a pitch, cuts it up off tackle there, gets the first down. And as I pointed out to you, it's funny how the man Alabama almost gave up on has led them. Those guys might as well have been the gates of the college football playoff world. He led them right through those gates there. Urban, there's a moment of truth for any team, right? But that Alabama, which should have almost by all rights and privileges, should have gotten beat by their rival the week before, Auburn, which got beat by New Mexico State and Jerry Kill. You know how good Jerry Kill is, but Alabama's in the playoffs, and the main reason they're in the playoffs is because their quarterback Jalen Milroe came around. Is that a moment of truth? Was that your checkmate moment?
I don't know him. I never met him, but I'm a fan of his. He got benched. The worst Alabama I've seen at 15 or since 19 or 2008, since I was playing them when I was coaching at Florida. They played South Florida as the worst looking Alabama team, not player wise, but just they didn't play hard. They were a mess. They benched their quarterback, played 2 other quarterbacks, and then Jalen Milroe just came back and came back and came back. He's resilient. He's not apprehensive about running, which I like that. That's uncommon nowadays. And, the play against Auburn, just what Auburn was doing on defense, we can do a whole nother show on that. Like, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
On 4th down and 31. But, we had Braxton, we had JT. That's exactly the kind of play. I grew up in a world where offensive football is a 100-year war, but win the 10-yard battles. And we would tell our guys 10-yard battles. And the quarterback's job is to get a first down. What's that mean? At all costs. And he did it. And I thought that was, kind of appropriate for the transformation he had from a starter benched to criticism to I'm going to go win the game right here with my legs, and he did.
Gotcha. Well, man, we'll do maybe 1, maybe 2 more of these as the year winds down. Obviously before the bowl games, the big time bowl games start. But you know how much I always enjoy this. And getting back to Jalen Milroe, it's interesting. I think the MVP of the last half of the season might have been Jalen Milroe. I mean, can't give him the Heisman necessarily, but oh my goodness, Nick Saban needed something and he got it from Jalen Milroe. And that's all coaches are looking for, right?
Yeah, he'll be number 1 on the list next year going into that season.
Yeah, I remember, man, the first time you saw him play, I remember you coming on here and your first word was, wow. Remember last year against Arkansas when he just, who is this cat?
Yeah, Percy. It's Percy Harvin / Reggie Bush with the ball in his hand every snap.
Yeah, exactly. Who could also throw it a little bit, especially those deep routes. Well, there you go. It sounds like almost the perfect quarterback for Urban Meyer if he had to make up one. But he had quite a few. Hey, Urban, appreciate you joining me again, man. I enjoyed it.
Merry Christmas, Tim.